This terrified boy was found by a whale in the middle of the ocean. What the whale did next will shock you. The boy swam through the water, every stroke driven by desperation against the relentless waves. Ethan's arms ached, his lungs burned with each gasping breath, and his body shivered from the icy ocean spray. Just hours earlier, he'd been laughing aboard a fishing boat with his family. Now he was alone, battling to survive in the vast, unforgiving blue. What happened to his family? The boy swam, each desperate stroke fighting the relentless waves. Ethan's arms ached, lungs burned, and his body shivered in the icy spray. Hours ago, he'd been laughing on a fishing boat with his family. Now he was alone, battling to survive in the vast blue. A sudden storm had turned their trip into chaos, capsizing the boat and scattering its wreckage. Ethan had no idea where his parents were. He screamed, his voice raw, but the sea offered no reply. The sun blazed overhead. Below, shadows stirred. Something was watching. Ethan swam harder, salt stinging his eyes. Panic surged as the ocean seemed to close in. Then he saw it, a massive dorsal fin slicing toward him. Could it be a shark, or something worse? It wasn't a shark. As the creature surfaced, Ethan saw the black and white markings of an orca, a killer whale. He'd read about their speed, power, and intelligence, but now, face to face, all he felt was terror. The orca circled below, its sleek body gliding effortlessly. Ethan struggled to stay calm, his mind racing. Was it sizing him up, waiting to attack? Would this be the end for Ethan? The whale surfaced again, closer this time. Its massive head bobbed above the water, its eyes seeming to lock onto Ethan's before vanishing beneath the waves. Ethan's heart pounded, every muscle tensed. Moments later, the orca returned, but instead of attacking, it swam beside him, close enough to feel its presence like a protective shadow. With each stroke, the whale guided him, its powerful movements carving a path through the chaos. Ethan's breath caught. Was it helping him? Why would a predator do that? Ethan was confused but too exhausted to question it. The whale's steady presence gave him just enough strength to keep going. Its massive form shielded him, carving a calm path through the unforgiving sea. It made no sense, but in the vast, lonely expanse, Ethan realized this unlikely guardian might be his best hope. The ocean stretched endlessly, swallowing all sense of time and place. Ethan's arms ached with each stroke, his breaths shallow. Yet the orca stayed by his side, an unshakable companion in the chaos. Its presence felt surreal, as if it understood his struggle. What did this creature want? The setting sun painted the horizon in crimson and gold as Ethan's thoughts swirled with fear, confusion, and fragile hope. Each time the waves rose to drag him under, the whale adjusted, shielding him and pushing him forward. But to what? Was there even land ahead? Or was this all futile? Ethan's heart raced as the orca suddenly dove, its massive tail rippling the water. He froze, treading nervously, eyes scanning the waves. Seconds stretched into agonizing minutes. Had the whale abandoned him? Just as panic set in, the water churned violently. The orca breached, spraying water into the air. Ethan flinched, then saw what it held. A tangle of kelp glistening in the fading light. The whale released it near him, nudging it closer. Ethan stared, stunned. Was it offering a lifeline? With shaking hands, he grabbed the slimy kelp and wrapped it around his waist. It added buoyancy, easing the strain on his body. A disbelieving laugh escaped him, echoing across the waves. Could this be more than coincidence? The orca circled slowly as if waiting for Ethan's next move. A fragile connection formed, a bond in the unlikeliest of circumstances. The whale wasn't just guiding him, it was keeping him alive. As darkness fell, stars shimmered above, their light reflecting on the water. Ethan gripped the kelp tighter, fear giving way to determination. Whatever this was, wherever it led, he wasn't alone. And with that, a spark of hope lit in his heart. Night swallowed the ocean, the faint starlight above barely illuminating the dark waves. Ethan clung to the kelp around his waist, exhaustion tugging at his limbs. The orca glided silently beside him, its dorsal fin cutting through the darkness, like a signal of hope. What was the whale trying to tell him? The silence was broken as the whale suddenly accelerated, circling him in tight loops. Ethan flinched, clutching the kelp tighter as small whirlpools formed around him. His heart pounded. Was the creature warning him of danger? Before he could dwell on his fear, the orca swam ahead with purpose. Ethan hesitated, then pushed his tired body to follow. The rhythmic crash of distant waves reached his ears, faint but unmistakable. Could this mean land? The whale slowed as a jagged outline appeared on the horizon, barely visible under the dim starlight. Ethan's heart leapt. His strokes quickened despite his fatigue. Driven by the sight of what could only be a shoreline, the orca stayed close, guiding him until the first waves of shallow water broke against his body. Ethan stumbled forward, collapsing onto the cool sand. He turned back, searching for the whale, but the ocean lay still and empty. Had his guardian left for good? Ethan's chest heaved as he lay there, the realization of his survival sinking in. The orca had vanished, but its impact lingered in every fiber of his being. Ethan lay sprawled on the wet sand, his chest rising and falling as he sucked in shallow, ragged breaths. The sand beneath him felt surreal, like a dream he was terrified to wake from. The rhythmic crash of waves behind him was the only sound breaking the stillness of the night. But was he truly safe now? As his strength slowly returned, Ethan pushed himself up on shaky arms. His gaze swept the horizon, searching for any sign of the orca. The water shimmered under the starlight, but it was eerily calm. The whale was gone. The realization left an ache in his chest. It had been his only ally in this endless ordeal. Then something caught his eye. A faint glow flickered farther up the shoreline. Ethan squinted, his heart pounding with a mix of hope and dread. Could it be a fire? Was someone there? The thought of other people filled him with relief, but he also felt a pang of unease. What if it wasn't help waiting for him? What if it was something worse? Who else could be out here in this desolation? Pushing himself to his feet, Ethan stumbled toward the light, his legs weak but determined. Each step brought him closer, and the glow grew stronger, revealing faint shadows moving against the brightness. His throat tightened as he strained to see more clearly. The distant shapes appeared human, but their movements were slow and deliberate, almost unnatural. A sharp crack of wood startled him. Ethan froze, his breath catching in his throat. The shadows ahead seemed to pause, as if they had sensed his presence. For a moment, the beach fell silent, save for the relentless crash of waves. Should he turn back or move forward? Summoning his courage, Ethan took another step. The sand shifted beneath his feet, but he pressed on, the flickering light growing ever closer. As he approached, he could make out the silhouette of a small fire, surrounded by figures huddled in silence. One of them turned sharply, their face hidden in the shadows. "Who's there?" a voice called, rough and low. Ethan's heart thundered. His voice cracked as he replied, I need help." The figure stepped forward, the firelight revealing deep-set eyes and a weathered face. "You're lucky to be alive," the stranger muttered, glancing toward the ocean. "But you're not safe yet." What did they mean by that? Ethan's relief was short-lived as the stranger's words lingered ominously in the night air. Whatever lay ahead might be just as dangerous as the ocean he had escaped. The stranger's words hung in the air, heavier than the humid night. Ethan took a cautious step forward, his body still trembling from exhaustion. He opened his mouth to speak but hesitated. What could he even ask? What could possibly be worse than what he'd just endured? What did this stranger know? The man gestured for Ethan to come closer, his rough voice softer now. "Sit down before you collapse," he said, pointing to the sand near the fire. Ethan nodded weakly and stumbled into the circle of flickering light. The figures around the fire turned to look at him, their faces marked by exhaustion and something else, fear. "You're lucky the ocean let you go," the stranger muttered, kneeling to stoke the fire. "But you've only traded one danger for another." Ethan's heart raced. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he tossed a piece of driftwood into the flames, his eyes fixed on the growing embers. Was he hiding something? One of the others finally spoke, a woman with sunburned cheeks and a tattered jacket. "This island. It isn't safe," she said, her voice shaking. "We thought we could survive here, but—" "Enough!" the man interrupted sharply, shooting her a warning glare. "No need to scare the boy more than he already is." Ethan clenched his fists. "I need to know. If I'm in danger, tell me." The man sighed heavily and turned back to Ethan. "There's something here in the forest. Something that doesn't belong." What could be in the forest? Ethan's stomach twisted as the words sank in. The forest loomed in the distance, its dense canopy shrouded in darkness. The thought of venturing into it made his skin crawl, but staying on the beach with strangers who refused to share the full truth wasn't comforting either. "We don't go in there at night," the man continued, his tone grim. "If you hear anything at all, you stay by the fire." Ethan nodded, but unease prickled at the back of his neck. The firelight seemed weaker now, barely holding back the shadows creeping from the trees. Was he safer here, or had he stepped into a new nightmare? Ethan's eyes darted between the fire and the dark forest. Sleep would be impossible, not with the weight of their warning pressing down on him. The fire crackled softly, its light barely holding the encroaching darkness at bay. Ethan sat close to the flames, his knees pulled to his chest. Around him, the strangers huddled in tense silence, their eyes darting nervously toward the forest's edge. Whatever they feared, it was out there. Was something watching them? The forest loomed ominously, a mass of shadowy trees swaying gently in the night breeze. Ethan's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the cryptic warning. Something unnatural in the forest? What could that even mean? He thought of the orca that had saved him, its strange, purposeful actions, and wondered if the island held secrets just as mysterious. A sudden sound broke the uneasy quiet, a faint rustling from the trees. Ethan's breath caught as the strangers stiffened, their heads snapping toward the noise. One of them, a wiry man with a scar across his cheek, gripped a crude spear tightly. "Stay close to the fire," the scarred man muttered. "It doesn't like the light." What didn't like the light? The rustling grew louder, now accompanied by an unsettling low hum. Ethan's pulse quickened. He peered into the darkness but saw nothing beyond the flickering firelight. The others shifted uneasily, their fear palpable. Then, just at the edge of the forest, two pinpoints of light appeared, glowing faintly, like eyes reflecting the fire's glow. Ethan's stomach twisted. The hum grew into a low, guttural growl, vibrating through the ground beneath him. Was it a beast? Or something else entirely? The scarred man rose abruptly, his spear poised. "If it comes closer, we'll need to run," he said, his voice taut with urgency. The others murmured in agreement, gathering what few makeshift weapons they had. Ethan's gaze remained fixed on the glowing eyes, which seemed to drift closer and closer. His instincts screamed at him to move, but his body was frozen in fear. Whatever this was, it wasn't natural. Suddenly the growl stopped. The forest went eerily quiet, as if the very air had been sucked away. The eyes blinked out, leaving only darkness. Had it gone? Or was it closer now? Ethan's chest heaved as he fought to steady his breathing. The strangers relaxed slightly, but their unease remained. The scarred man lowered his spear but didn't put it down. "Get some rest while you can," he said grimly. "It'll be back, and next time, it won't stop at the edge." Ethan swallowed hard, his mind racing with questions. What was this thing stalking them, and how long before it made its move? Ethan sat by the fire, his eyes wide and darting between the shadows of the forest and the wary strangers around him. The night was unnervingly silent, save for the crackling flames. He could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating, as if the very island itself was holding its breath. What lurked beyond the fire's light? A distant rustling broke the silence, faint at first but growing louder. The strangers stiffened. One of them, the scarred man, gripped his spear tightly and muttered, "Stay close to the fire." His voice trembled slightly, betraying his fear. Ethan's heart pounded as the sound came closer. The woman in the tattered jacket whispered, "It's here." What was it? The firelight danced wildly as the wind picked up, carrying with it a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate the ground beneath them. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as two glowing orbs appeared at the edge of the forest, the same eyes he had seen earlier. The strangers scrambled to reinforce the fire, throwing branches into the flames to make it roar higher. Suddenly, a massive shadow emerged from the tree line. It was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Its form was vaguely humanoid, but twisted, with limbs too long and skin that shimmered unnaturally in the firelight. The creature let out a deafening roar, its glowing eyes fixed on the group. "Was this the end?" The scarred man shouted. "Stay together! It won't cross the light!" But Ethan could see the terror in his eyes. The creature paced along the edge of the firelight, its movements jerky and unnatural. Then, to Ethan's horror, it lunged forward, testing the barrier of flames. Before anyone could react, a sudden, powerful splash echoed from the ocean. Everyone turned as the massive orca breached the waves, landing near the shore with a resounding crash. The creature paused, its attention snapping toward the orca. The whale let out a deep, resonant call that seemed to shake the very air. Could this be his savior once again? The creature snarled, retreating slightly as the orca advanced, its body partially submerged in the shallow water. With another thunderous call, the orca surged forward, spraying water and creating waves that lashed against the shore. The creature hesitated, its glowing eyes flickering as if unsure. Seizing the moment, the scarred man shouted, "Now! Into the water!" Ethan didn't think. He ran, following the strangers as they dashed into the waves. The orca positioned itself between them and the creature, its massive body a shield. As they waded deeper, the creature let out a furious roar but did not follow, its glowing eyes fading back into the forest. Had they escaped? Ethan clung to the orca's dorsal fin as it led them further out to sea, away from the cursed island. The strangers swam alongside, their fear slowly replaced by relief. The orca's calm, deliberate movements steadied Ethan's nerves, and for the first time he felt safe. As the sun rose, painting the horizon in soft hues of orange and pink, the island became a distant silhouette. The scarred man looked at Ethan and said, "You've got one hell of a guardian, kid." Ethan smiled faintly, his grip on the orca tightening. The whale had saved him twice now, guiding him through impossible odds. Whatever force had brought them together, he knew he would never forget it. The orca gave one final call, a sound that resonated deep within Ethan's chest. Then, as if satisfied with its task, it dove beneath the waves, disappearing into the endless blue. Ethan watched the ripples fade, a bittersweet ache in his heart. He was alive, and though his journey was far from over, he knew he owed everything to the creature that had been his guardian in the vast and merciless ocean. Could there be more to this connection? The question lingered in his mind as he floated with the strangers, their laughter mingling with the gentle lapping of the waves. For now, survival was enough.